So I'm going to run through the tutorial for Gallium Data on SQL Server. You can follow along or just sort of watch how it goes. It doesn't take very long. So the first step is to make sure that Docker is running. So you can just run this command in your terminal, and you should see some sort of output similar to this. The exact version number doesn't really matter. We want to make sure that Docker is up and running. Then we're going to create a network for the containers that we're going to start. And we're going to start 3 containers. As the tutorial says, there are easier ways of doing this, like Kubernetes and Docker Compose and whatnot. But we're going to keep it simple here, and we want to make sure that we understand everything that's going on. So first, we're going to start a container that runs Microsoft SQL Server. This is the Linux version, but it doesn't really matter. Any version would work. Then we're going to start another container that runs Gallium Data itself. When you run this on your own machine, it'll take longer because it'll have to download the images. And that can take a minute or two depending on your connection speed. And finally, we're going to start a database client, which in this case is SQL Pad. You could actually use any SQL Server client, really, but SQL Pad is convenient and it's easily available. So we now have the situation where we have 3 containers running, SQL Pad talking to Gallium Data, and Gallium Data acting as the proxy between the database client, which is SQL Pad, and SQL Server. So let's take a look at the database. So this is the schema of the database. It's a very simple schema, obviously. We want to see what's in the database, so we can run some queries like this here. And we're going to see some data. Nothing terribly exciting so far. So we're now actually going to change how the database works. So I'm going to open Gallium Data. And everything has already been set up for this demo. And you can see a number of filters here, but they're all disabled. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at this filter called Filter Out Discontinued Products. And the way it's set up is that it's going to intercept certain calls, and it's going to change them. The code is fairly simple. It's basically one line of code here. And so we're going to activate this filter here, and then we're going to rerun the same query. Now notice that some products are discontinued, so we're going to rerun the query, and this time we don't see the discontinued products. That's because the filter has intercepted the query and rewritten it on the fly. So that's pretty cool. We could do some much fancier stuff here, and there are some examples in the tutorial. For instance, we could change how many rows to return, or we could reject the query, for instance, for whatever reason. Another example is changing the data. So in the previous example, we changed the query that was sent to the database. Now we're going to change the data that's coming back from the database. So again, this is kind of already set up in the demo repository. So if I take a look at all the customers, I've decided that I don't want to be too friendly with my customers, so I'm going to hide their first name and just have the initial. So the way to do this is we have a filter that's already defined here. It's literally just a single line of code, basically. It's going to intercept any result set that comes from a select on customers. So we're going to activate this filter, publish it, rerun the query, and this time we can see that we only get the initial of the customer, not their full name. Again, we could get much fancier here. We could, for instance, hide some rows or insert additional rows, or generate data. There's really no limits to what you can do at this point. But you get the gist. Basically, you insert Gallium Data between database client and database server, and suddenly you have a whole bunch of new options that are almost impossible to do without something like Gallium Data. And towards the end, you'll get the cleanup instructions so that you can return your machine back to its original state. This is all done using containers, so it doesn't affect anything on your machine anyway. I hope you'll take a look at Gallium Data, try it out with your own data. It's always more fun when you use it with your own data. And thanks for watching.